Welcome to West Coast Focus, sponsored by the Sierra Club Ventana chapter. I'm your host, Steve Zmak, and today's show is all about using your photography for social change. As artists, we have a unique perspective on the world and a unique voice with which to share it. I believe we have a responsibility to use our art for more than just a pretty picture, but to inspire our society and leaders for change and to become leaders ourselves. Ansel Adams believed this and accomplished amazing things for our state and national parks, environmental protection, and human rights. Many West Coast photographers committed themselves over the last century to improving society through their artwork. From Paul Strand to Dorothea Lange of yesteryear to Ken Light and James Baylog today, as well as the three photographers we have on our panel, all of which have experience and success in integrating their photography into social action campaigns with proven results. Our first guest began photographing in 1965 while serving in the U.S. Army in Vietnam and was influenced early on by photojournalist William Hubble before pursuing journalism himself. He traveled extensively throughout the Caribbean, Europe, and Asia. His past exhibits include Vietnam veterans and their art and a traveling exhibit documenting his stay on a farm in China. His newest exhibit, Inherent Worth and Dignity, is getting national attention and becoming a model for other photographers and cities to follow. I know him from the Imagemakers of Monterey. Welcome, Bob Sadler.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
She's a world traveler, passionate about nature and creativity with the goal of celebrating beauty and connecting to spirit and inspiring others to do what they love. She's a best-selling author whose books include Living Life in Full Bloom, Monet's Passion, Ideas, Inspiration, and Insights from the Painter's Gardens, and Painterly Photography. Her photographs are collected by museums, corporations, and hospitals. She teaches art and photography right here in Monterey and is organizing art exhibits showcasing the natural beauty of the forward Oak Woodlands. I also know her from the Imagemakers. It's great to have you here, Liz.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
In 1982, he was the first photographer to receive the Imogen Cunningham Award for color work for his Kimono series and won a gold award in the 2014 San Francisco International Photography Exhibition. He's in the permanent collections of the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, Brooklyn Museum, Crocker Art Museum, Santa Barbara Museum of Art, and Library of Congress, to name just a few. He's the president of the Center for Photographic Art here in Carmel and creator of their annual Pi Labs and Pi Tech, and a trustee at the Monterey Museum of Art. His current project he's working on explores his family's emotional shame resulting from Executive Order 9066 in 1942, the internment of American citizens of Japanese descent. I'm very pleased to have Jerry Takagawa on the show today.
Thank you, Steve.
Before we kick off today's discussion, I want to introduce you to one of my mentors for art and social action, Kira Korea Corser, through a recorded interview I did with her about a week ago. I met Kira in 1996 when we both worked at Cal State Monterey Bay, and she and poet Fran Adler were releasing a new book and exhibit, A Matriot's Dream, Healthcare for All. Kira took on social action early on in her life because she was suffering from ovarian cancer and had no medical insurance. She was destitute. And you're going to see a portrait of her, a self-portrait, disembodied time exposure of her in her hospital bed at that time when she's losing her hair. But as a result of that tragic experience, she has gone on over the last 20 years to create social campaigns with real results, real legislation, real policy change. And in this short film, she's going to talk about a little bit how she accomplishes that. Stick with it.
artists have a unique position in that we have the power to reach the heart. And I think that photography, when you combine it with different things, I even paint on my photographs. I teach classes in that because it's gives people that feel like they don't have art skills, they don't feel like they can draw, it gives them an opportunity to be incredibly creative and expressive. And if you think about it, social issues and community strengths have a lot to do with a voice, with having a voice that feels like you are heard, like you're that you can make a difference. And so I feel that the work that I do and the work that other photographers do is really important, and I actually really wish more photographers would talk to me. I'm working on a series right now called Artists as Changemakers, and I think it's really, really important for us to see that we can have a voice.
Where? This is not the Depression. People wait in line for food jammed into a walkway outside the church. A sign at the curb says, "Stop." Another says, "No left turn." A woman sits. On a ledge beneath the stained glass window, she takes up little space. Masking tape holds her jeans together. Hunger, she says, has made it difficult to talk. It has hit her in the stomach like a fist that shatters glass. It has cut the height of her glance, the boom of her voice. She is slowly being erased. The roll of her blanket, her small sack, a comb, hold her together. She even welcomes the lice. They make her scratch, remind her she is still here.
So I really think that by integrating poetry, music, painting, three-dimensional work with photography and facts and statistics, sometimes they're not the same thing, and quotes from people that are considered experts or that have researched this project or issue, I think that's when you have power, because you pull it all together. That's how people learn, that's how they feel. You get inundated on the news with opinion now and some fact, but you don't really know what to expect or what to believe. And sometimes if you actually work through the heart, and photography and other art forms have that ability, it makes a huge difference.
This doctor I had interviewed showed me a photograph of a baby's brain scan that had 2 black holes on it. Sometimes when a woman uses cocaine, it can cause hemorrhaging, and that would cause those black holes in the baby's brain scan. So I felt very frustrated that I couldn't show some of the things that I was feeling in the exhibition, in my photographs. So I did this poem. It's called Black Hole. At night, a woman without eyes carries a bucket, sloshes water, washes a mother's wounds. She walks with me around white cocaine mountains, through puddles stained red with birth. I carry my camera, but I can't photograph the baby's scream. It rakes my nerves like fingernails. I can't shoot the smell of diarrhea, the baby's bottoms blistering as drugs leave their bodies. In a little girl's brain, a black hole sucks my heart. Still bothers me. Good.
I feel like life is a mix of different experiences, and not all of them feel like reality. And so, because the emotions are not always realistic. So, by including poetry and poets, and by including creative writing, video, painters, activists, children, school teachers, legislators, policymakers, newspaper editors, all these people have come together over the years in amazing ways to make amazing change. New nursing positions. Vanderbilt University in Tennessee helped a struggling clinic stay open that was about to close because of our work. People in Washington, D.C., after Clinton was first in office, wrote that the photograph of the matriarch was the most inspiring thing he'd experienced at this conference. Did this project with starting with research, and I think that's one of the keys to making art that actually has real impact, is when you combine the statistics, the facts, and the stories in the art part of it, the beauty and the photographs and the heart, that's when you can make change.
Well, that was a lot to take in. Kira certainly knows what she's talking about from both sides of the argument, both as the artist and as the person that the artist is trying to help. Liz, you're doing a lot of work right now on the beauty of the Fort Ord Oak Woodlands. The Monterey Downs project by the city of Seaside is slated to cut down 41,000 trees, which seems preposterous to me. Like, we're almost talking about, like, well, what if we bulldoze the whole city of Seaside to plant a forest? I mean, that's how absurd this sounds. What have you been doing on this issue?
Well, I feel like what we love, we protect. And I feel like beauty is an entryway to love. So instead of just having this preconceived notion that Fort Ord is all ugly and who cares about it, I thought if we invited artists to photograph it and have some exhibitions and to bring the community there with children and beauty and a new way of experiencing it, that it would go to the heart and people would then appreciate. Mm-hmm. So you were involved in it, and we organized a show that was in Seaside at the Press Club right? That was great. And we had spoken word, and we had photographs and paintings and drawings, and then we also had something here around beauty here at the AMP television station. And I think it's about the conversation and how we bring it out.
And the Land Watch lunches,
That's right.
where we displayed our art in a public forum where this was the conversation piece.
That's right.
Right. Bob, with your exhibition, Inherent Worth and Dignity, photographs of homeless men here in Monterey County, what similarities did you draw from Kira's work to your own?
Yeah, very similar experience in the end. I started just with the idea of using some of the photographs of homeless men in Monterey County as a way to build more empathy in the community, hoping that empathy would lead to some fundraising and some better public policy for the homeless. And so for the last 3 years, I've been using portraiture and bringing those pictures to the public in as many different ways as possible, through exhibits, through talks, and also working with the men themselves to see if we can raise self-esteem with those.
And what success? Is it too early to start gauging success? I mean, has more funds been raised for the nonprofit organizations? Have we seen any policy change?
Yeah, it's really hard to prove cause and effect, so I don't even go there exactly, but just at the point we were ready to do the first exhibit, the federal government withdrew all of the funds necessary to run the iHelp program. And we were within 60 days of losing the program that I had worked with to get the pictures. And so we used those pictures immediately as a way of trying to do more fundraising, and the funds were raised.
Excellent.
And then we needed some public policy changes among the local towns, and we were able to get those. So we saw a moment in which we shifted from total dependence on federal money to full dependence on local money to keep it going. And now it's very healthy. And also we've added an iHelp program for women. And other women's programs have also been very successful in raising funds.
So we're going to be starting to see a series of women's portraits then?
Oh, well, we've offered to do that, and we're in discussion. I can tell you it's a much different thing than taking the men's photographs.
Interesting.
Very, very different dynamic.
Jerry, your latest exhibit explores all the plastic debris in our ocean and how it's killing off the sea life there, which is actually a metaphor of how it's going to affect us ultimately. What have you been doing with this exhibit? Who's been seeing it, and what results have you seen?
Well, False Food has been in exhibits on the peninsula, San Francisco, the Boston area, and Sacramento just recently. So it's making the rounds, as it were. And I think the thing that surprises me is that every time I open this exhibit and tell the story, people are learning something for the first time. And I still can't imagine why that is, but in the end, it's nice to know that at least, you know, a few more people are learning every time we do this.
Which is why exhibits like this are so important.
Right.
And also now, see, you also have a great background in graphic design, and I see that you applied that artistic skill to this exhibit as well. It's not just the photographs, but combining it with the sea debris on top of the photographs, and also in a nice aesthetic arrangement.
Yeah, it is. There was a time when I decided that, you know, I was tasked to do an anti-war poster, and I could do an anti-war poster or I could do a pro-peace poster. Decided to, make something beautiful in favor of what I wanted, almost more than going against what I didn't like. And so these images really are trying to be beautiful using instruments of death, as it were. And in a sense, there's obviously that paradox, but it tends to, be more accessible in a sense. People really get interested in what it is.
Good. Well, now it's time to see some of this great photography. So now we're going to take about a 4-minute break, and we're going to see a slideshow of Jerry's work and a slideshow of Liz's work. So stay tuned, and we'll see you back here in a little bit. Welcome back to our discussion about photography and social action with Bob Sadler, Elizabeth Murray, and Jerry Takagawa. Jerry was mentioning in his last answer before the break of turning the message around and not going negative, but going positive. It seems like you applied that to your project.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. I never thought about it, but when I was asked to take the photographs of homeless men, and I've not been a portrait photographer really, I just went at it instinctively. And what I ended up doing was teasing the best of them out in the sitting. And it was just felt natural, and I did it. And after the first 15 photographs, we realized, in fact, Barbara Bullock Wilson, Wynn Bullock's daughter, pointed it out to me. And as soon as she pointed it out to me, I said, yeah, I guess that's right. And then when I saw the men's reaction, it was the only thing I could do, really. It felt great. And so that's the direction I took, is to show the best of these men to themselves and to the world. Mm-hmm. And I really am happy with that approach.
And I remember when you showed these photos, the first ones you did, you showed them at an Imagemakers meeting, and we didn't know they were homeless men. We just knew they were portraits. And you asked the question, what professions do you think these guys are? And people were saying, CEOs and engineers. And then you said, these guys are all homeless men here in our own county. And you just blew everyone's mind, because that is not how they come across in the portraits. You really brought out their inner light.
Well, once Barbara pointed out that they didn't look homeless, what struck me was I love the work of Dorothea Lange, mm-hmm. because she always found the nobility in people in the Depression. And I love the work of Karsh, who only shot, well, he didn't only shoot really important people, but that's what he's known for. Mm-hmm. And I said, what if we took his approach in terms of lighting and studio work to homeless men? What would happen? And so when Imagemakers couldn't figure out that they were homeless, then I knew we were on the right track. And I've been really happy with that direction.
Good. And Liz, from the photos we just showed, children playing out at Fort Ord. So you're not showing bulldozed trees and wiped out landscape. You're showing the very positive value of that land and why we should be protecting it.
And who we are protecting it for.
Great
We're
point.
protecting it for the children of the future, mm-hmm. and those are neighborhood children. And for them to go out to Fort Ord and to play in the trees was like going to summer camp. And that is why I think it's important to save that land, because wildness is what we all need to thrive. Mm-hmm. And to have the children animate the place in a positive way, rather than our memories of destruction and war and mm-hmm. bombs and all these explosives and that kind of thing. No, we hold on to the beauty and fun and what we really want to save it for.
Great.
So having the children come out was lovely.
Excellent point, and great visual strength to that imagery too. Jerry, the project you're working on, the internment of American citizens during World War II, that's a dark subject. How How are you going to approach that one in a positive way?
Not sure yet. It's, it isn't really the bigger internment story. It's really a story of my own family. I'm just looking at personal history, and I'm trying to see how that affected my parents and how their emotions then were transferred to me, and what that, what kind of aesthetic judgment and viewpoint I have coming out of that whole experience, with them in a sense. And it's been a very interesting experience. It's very personal, and it's probably one of the more difficult things I've done. So it is based on a similar, kind of a photographic approach as False Food, but it's going to have a lot more text-based information as part of the image.
Excellent. So again, bringing more creative mediums to bear to strengthen the message.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little less cryptic, and and also I will probably title these images, which I've never done, and I've just found that as much as you can bring people into what you're doing with other means, it's a good thing. Are
you connecting with other people outside your family who went through this experience?
I have throughout my life, and it's just a natural thing that even people my age can talk about it. If they were raised in a Japanese American family, they all have that same story in their background. So in different places, different kinds of stories, but there's a very common denominator between my generation.
And when something like that happens to any group of American citizens, it could happen to any of us, and that's why it's so important to keep people educated to that. It wasn't that long ago. It was just outside our own lifetimes that this happened, and we got to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. And with the rhetoric being spewed during these national elections right now,
exactly.
No better time to remind people that this behavior is wrong. This is not good policy.
Yeah, it's a behavior that really comes making decisions while everyone's afraid.
That's right.
And you need to pause, I think.
Now, Liz, you've integrated some like poetry readings into the imagery, the forward imagery. Is that true?
Well,
or into some of the other campaigns you've been working on?
Well, I think poetry or writing or storytelling or play or getting children to do art or different kinds of involvement where we bring in family. I think family is really important to bring in, or to have for other mediums is maybe drawing, like mindfulness drawing, where you're really present and you're falling in love again with those oaks or with that place. So then you'll take a stand. But I think that this idea of commonality and beauty is really important. And so we have a fresh look. We have an open heart, and that gives us a fresh look. And I think, Jerry, you coming with personal story is really important. Personal story. This is what it's about: authenticity and vulnerability and why we love something. So when I took some of these images like to the county meetings and showed them when the county supervisors, no, the trees are not all dead. No, there's children playing in them. No, there's beauty there. Please come with us. It opened up their hearts. So I think multimedia is really important.
Bob, I don't know if you were actually able to pull it off or you're still in the works, but I know in the early stages of this exhibit you talked about a video component in the exhibit where a viewer walks up to the portrait on the wall and the person comes alive and tells their story to the viewer. Are you still working on that?
Yeah, well, it's actually, we were able to apply it. Timothy Barrett, who is a video guy, and also is now a councilman in Monterey and advocating for the homeless in that role, which has been fabulous. He did 7 videos of men who were willing to open up and tell their story. And he just did a magnificent job with those 7 videos. And we were able to boil each one of them down to 3 minutes. And now you can use something called Augmented Reality, take your iPhone or whatever, point it at the picture, and he will come alive in the photograph. And it's just an amazing technology. And whenever we put the exhibit up, you can do that.
Oh, great.
And we have a book. If you point your device at the picture in the book, it will come alive in the book.
Wow, this is the first I've heard of that technology. What a great use for it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful technology.
Good. Well, right now we're going to hear from our sponsor, the Sierra Club Ventana chapter, and we're going to see a short film, just a couple minutes, talking about the Ventana chapter's connection to West Coast photography, which is really strong, as well as all the free guided hikes that they give throughout our wild and natural lands, a lot of them going on throughout the month. So stick around, check out what the Sierra Club has, and we'll see you back here in a couple minutes. Hi, I'm photographer Steve Zmak. I've been a member of the Sierra Club for 15 years. The Sierra Club was founded by John Muir and other conservationists in 1892 when they rallied to defend Yosemite National Park from encroaching development. Famous West Coast photographer Ansel Adams was elected to the National Sierra Club Board of Directors in 1934, a post he held for 37 years. In his Carmel Highlands home in 1963, he organized nearly 100 Monterey Bay activists to form the Ventana chapter of the Sierra Club, representing Monterey and Santa Cruz counties. Today, the Ventana chapter has grown to more than 6,500 local members. This is important to me and all West Coast photographers like Ansel Adams because the Ventana chapter protects the land, sea, and sky that we like to photograph. Not just like to photograph, but have a spiritual connection to that is rendered in our photographs. I never was fortunate enough to meet Ansel Adams before he died in 1984, and he never was fortunate enough to meet his hero, John Muir, before he died in 1914. But thanks to them and their legacy, I can photograph our pristine and wild landscapes just like they did, and photographers long after me will too. We can't take the natural beauty of the Central Coast for granted. There are a few that always have dollar signs in their eyes. Without the Ventana chapter's relentless effort to protect these wild places, the Big Sur coast would resemble that of Orange County. There would be more acres of asphalt parking than acres of sandy beach along the Monterey Bay. Coastal access would be reserved for a wealthy few, and the Fort Ord National Monument would be a racetrack. But the Ventana chapter offers photographers so much more than this. Free guided hikes throughout our natural lands. The Sierra Club was founded on the idea that if you introduce a person to the beauty of nature, they will be inspired to protect it, and it's worked for 124 years. The free hiking schedule and all the details about each hike are always available on the Ventana chapter's website, www.ventanasierraclub.org. Check out these hikes going on this month. Explore, enjoy, protect the planet. That's the Sierra Club way. Come join us on a hike. Welcome back to our discussion on using photography for social action. Jerry, what was the first community service social action project you took on and applied your photography to?
Well, let's see. We're going back to the late 60s, and I think the first significant one was photographing the riots at People's Park.
Wow.
And it was not a planned project. It was an accidental
You were
project.
there with your camera.
I was there, but you know, before that I had a run-in with the police about a rock concert that got canceled, got beat up for no reason, and I had a lot of anger about that.
Yeah.
And when People's Park started, I just went out every day, and it was every day for a week while that event lasted, and photographed. And it ended up being part of the People's Park book and an exhibit in Berkeley at the time. So it was kind of my kind of a launch into using photography as a medium for change.
In a very dramatic way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, my experience was more personal, where I was meeting people that did not have the things that I had in life. And being a young man coming out of Orange County, I didn't realize that this was the case with people until I was sitting down and talking with them. So it was a more subtle realization to me of what's going on in the world, and things have to change. Liz, how did it happen for you?
Well, I was always into social activism since I was a teenager, but I never really brought it together with my photography until I thought, how can I volunteer and use it somehow? And so in the early 90s, I decided to use it to make beautiful portraits of people who were hungry in Monterey County, because it felt like there was such a feeling like we're all wealthy here, but there were so many working poor, and to go to their homes through the food bank and to offer to make beautiful portraits of the mother and children and families. And I did it with SX70 Polaroids that I drew on and painted, and then gave them a portrait. And it was just a volunteer project, but it was stunning to me that they were all working poor, and they all were intact families, and they were all full of love, but they weren't making it.
And that, I'm sure that experience that you provided them added to their dignity and self-esteem to be able to participate in something like that with you.
Yeah, very much like Bob's projects, and it was a big deal to have a picture of your family, and to make it romantic and beautiful and intact. So that was the first.
Bob, how about you?
Well, I also have a long history in social activism, but didn't try to tie it to photography in any particular way until we did the portraits of the homeless. Having looked back, I realized I had done some in similar way. Even when I look at the pictures I took when I was in Vietnam, they were of kids, they were of families, they were landscape, they were flowers. They weren't the war. When I went to China to introduce businesses in China to businesses in Connecticut, I also ended up taking pictures of kids and families and other photographs which would make it feel like a place you could go and do business. And so I think I've always used photography to influence, and I've always tried to get the beauty of the place to others.
Now I see you submitted some images, and we just saw some of those of a project you're working on with your church, and your church's philosophy is a big part of your philosophy that you apply to your social action. But can you talk about the new project, because it looks like you're going in a much more beyond photography and more painterly, with some verbal messages in there too.
Yeah, I've actually taken a big step toward what Liz is doing with painterly photography. I'm making composites from existing work that I have, making it look much more like a painting, and imagining a scene right from scratch. And the church that I belong to, the Unitarian Universalist Church, is very strong on social action. In fact, social action is a form of worship. And so we want to surround the congregation in the sanctuary with images that remind us of that mission. And so I got about 15 images now. Each one has a principle of the church and a landscape, and it looks more like a painting.
Yeah, very, very nice. Okay, well, it's time to see some more photography. We're going to see Bob Sadler's work. We've been talking a lot about his portraits of homeless men in Monterey County. You're going to actually get to see him now, and you get to see a selection of my photography as I've applied it to multiple social action campaigns. Stick around, and we'll see you back here in a couple minutes. Welcome back to West Coast Focus. Bob, what can we see from you next? What are you working on?
I think all the work for the church is going to take me a while, and I'm so interested now in composites and texture and color that I think it's going to be much more like painting. I'm going to try applying that to portraits of the homeless men. So I may move from black and white to more painterly portraits.
I look forward to that. What are we going to see from you next? You do such a wide variety of stuff, and I really encourage everyone to check out Liz's website. I was looking at like the different videos that you've done on your own artistic philosophy and your teaching philosophy. So what do you got coming up?
Well, I'm going to be teaching an iPhoneography workshop on Saturday, April 30th. And the pictures of the oaks were all done with my iPhone. And my newest book, Living Life in Full Bloom, is with the iPhone. And it is a fun, immediate way to play and to layer apps and be more painterly. But it also is a great way of putting on social media and to immediately get images out in the world with your message. And so for social activism or environmental activism, it's great. I have to teach myself my big camera again because I'll be going back to Monet's garden to photograph this May for my calendars and exhibitions.
How exciting.
Yeah.
Jerry, what are we going to see? Now we know the project you're working on about your family. What else you got going on?
Well, I kind of want to mention, as a foundation, I would say that social change is really based on shifting consciousness in a sense. And something that we're doing at Center for Photographic Art, the PI program, is doing that with the PI Labs and PI Tech. And it's a pretty innovative program to help people maximize their story, and the world is held together by stories, so we need more of those people doing that.
And when's PI Lab going on this year?
The PI Tech is scheduled for June 24, 25, and 26. And PI Labs doesn't have a specific date, but it would likely be in November.
Okay, and that's photography.org for people who want more information on that.
Yes.
Great. Well, I have coming up this month on Friday, April 22nd, which is also Earth Day, State Senator Bill Monning and Assemblymember Mark Stone are going to be having their annual open houses. They open up their Monterey offices. They're just a couple doors down from the AMP studios here in Heritage Harbor, Monterey, and that's going to be, I said, April 22nd. from 4 to 6 p.m. I have an exhibit of 34 photos up at Senator Monning's office, and that exhibit's now going to be going into its 3rd year. And I like having that exhibit there because it reminds the senator and all the activists and policymakers that come there to meet of the great natural beauty we have on the Central Coast, and it's very much worth protecting, and we're very serious about protecting it. But anyways, come on out. Let the Assembly Member Stone and Senator Monning know what issues matter to you. This is your chance to step up and communicate to the leadership what you care about. So now we're towards the end of our show, and we have a segment we call Reflections in the Developer Tray. And I did a call for photos around Monterey County for photographers to submit their photos that were used in social action campaigns, and we got a lot of them, and we've put them together here in a slideshow to the music of the original music of Pacific Grove's own Bill Specht, and he also did the music in the other slideshows and the titles as well. But stick around for all these great photos of Monterey County, and come on back, and we'll see you soon. Welcome back. Now, it's interesting with that community slideshows and open submission, and two points I want to make. You notice about half of those photos concerned the forward Oak Woodlands, their beauty, and protecting them. So we know that's on a lot of people's minds right now. The other thing that was interesting is that I didn't receive any photos representing conservative viewpoints on any issues, and that would have been interesting to have in the mix. I want to remind you, mpenphotoevents.blogspot.com is your source for everything going on in photography, exhibits, workshops, talks, people going out and shooting their exhibits. You can get it all here, and please also send them your posts so everybody else knows of the great work you're doing. That's our program. Thank you, Bob, Liz, and Jerry. Thanks to Michael Martinez, our director in the control room, and Bill Specht for all that great original music. A big thank you to Kira Corser for her guidance and advice and patience through all the technical difficulties of that interview. You can get her photography and her books and see her videos on her website at kiracorser.com. And of course, thank you Rita D'Alessio and the Sierra Club Ventana chapter for preserving our wild spaces and giving us lots of good stuff to photograph, and for all those great free hikes that you take us on. Join us again on Thursday, May 12th for Fine Artists Shooting Commercially with guests Tom O'Neill, Craig Lovell, and Rob Ellis. And we'll be exploring sort of the different approach to strong communications, but for the other side of things, more corporate communications than social justice. As always, you have my guarantee to see at least 100 photos on this show. Today's show had over 150. May your film be fresh and your censored debris free. Thanks for focusing on the West Coast. Now get up off the couch and go change the world.
But we were young and we were surprised, and so what happened was really amazing. The mayor of San Diego initiated a task force to research and use the photographs and the poems because of our work. The Senator Wadi Deda from Sacramento brought it there to Sacramento and had it in the Capitol, but not in the pretty rotunda, in the downstairs where the legislators had to walk by this giant book, because each piece is framed like a 24 by 30 or 40 by 30 inch frame, and they're like stories. So the photographs were life-size, the words were matted and framed inside this floating book, and filled the whole hall. And so they brought Fran and I up to talk to 9 legislators, and the senator said legislation had just been sitting on people's desks for months, and no one was paying any attention until our exhibit was there. And all of a sudden, they were interested in it. And they not only were they interested in it, they flew us up to talk to all the legislators about this. So that's when we really started learning. We were a part of, after that, the Red Cross printed 300 copies of our book, and we were part of Comic Relief with Whoopi Goldberg and Robin Williams, and then we were in Washington D.C. in Congress, and it just was a pretty amazing start to my community service work, and I kept it going over 20 years now.